The music of the Whisperleaf Glade celebration was the sweetest betrayal Lyra had ever heard. Laughter and flute song echoed under the luminous moon petal blossoms, masking the poison in her father's chalice and the cold calculation in her cousin Theron's eyes as he watched the old elf lord drink. High above, unseen in the velvet night, the mournful cry of a dragon echoed through the Ember Peak Mountains, a sound Lyra would come to know as the herald of her shattered world. Lord Elaraine, Lyra's father and keeper of the Sapphire Glade, had been a beacon of wisdom for their woodland realm of Eloria. Theron, his ambitious nephew, had always simmered with resentment. His smile never quite reached his storm-gray eyes. That night, celebrating a rare alignment of the twin moons Silvra and Lunara, Theron saw his chance. He'd whispered lies to influential elders of the Circle of Roots, spun tales of Elaraine's failing strength and reckless dealings with the wild dragons of the peaks. The poison, distilled from the deadly shadow vine, worked slowly, mimicking a wasting sickness. As Elaraine weakened, coughing into silken handkerchiefs, Theron's influence grew. He spoke of necessary change, of protecting Eloria from the perceived dragon threat Elaraine supposedly courted. Lyra, barely past her 60th summer, young for an elf, felt a chill deeper than winter settle in her bones. She saw the glint of triumph when Theron thought no one watched, heard the subtle shift in the elders' voices when they deferred to him. When her father, his once vibrant green eyes dimmed, finally passed under the weeping willow sacred to their family, Theron was immediately named Regent Keeper. His first decree? Lyra, deemed too grief-stricken and impulsive for responsibility, was to be sent to the remote Silent Pines outpost, a place of exile bordering the desolate Scorchlands where dragons sometimes hunted. It was a death sentence disguised as concern. Theron's betrayal wasn't just political, it was personal, a venomous root strangling her family tree. Lyra didn't go quietly to her exile. She fled. Guided by fragmented childhood memories of her father's tales and a desperate, burning need to survive, she plunged into the treacherous Ember Peak Mountains, Theron's supposed domain of monsters. The jagged peaks scraped the sky, winds howled like lost spirits, and the air grew thin and biting. Theron's hunters, elves twisted by his promises of power and belonging to the newly formed Talon Guard, pursued her relentlessly. She evaded them through sheer will, scaling cliffs, hiding in steaming volcanic vents, and drinking from bitter, mineral-tasting springs. Hunger gnawed, exhaustion threatened to pull her into oblivion, and the ever-present fear of the hunters was matched only by the terrifying legends of the mountain's true masters, the dragons. One evening, cornered on a precarious ledge by 3 Talon Guards, their cruel laughter echoing in the thin air, Lyra faced the end. Their leader, a sneering elf named Vorlin, raised his curved star iron blade. "Theron send his regrets, cousin," he spat. Despair threatened to drown her. Then, the world erupted. A shadow blotted out the twin moons, not a cloud, but vast, leathery wings. Heat washed over the ledge, intense and dry. A roar, deeper than thunder, shook the very mountain. The Talon Guards screamed, not in attack, but in primal terror. A colossal dragon, scales the color of molten obsidian shimmering with veins of fiery crimson, plummeted from above. It didn't land. It struck. One massive claw snatched Vorlin mid-swing, plucking him from the ledge like an insect. The other hunters scrambled backwards, falling over each other. The dragon, Ignarion, a name Lyra would learn later, fixed one immense ancient eye, swirling like captured magma, on Lyra. She stood frozen, not by fear of the dragon, but by awe and the sudden, impossible absence of her hunters.
The dragon snorted, a plume of smoke curling from its nostrils. Then, with a powerful downbeat that nearly knocked Lyra off the ledge, it ascended. Vorlin's fading shrieks, swallowed by the wind. Lyra was alone again, but the path of her revenge had just collided with a force of nature. Ignarion didn't kill her. He observed. Lyra, driven by desperation and a flicker of insight from her father's old stories about ancient pacts, did the unthinkable. She didn't cower. She stood tall on the ledge, facing the immense creature circling above. Drawing on the innate magic all Aeliorian elves possessed, a connection to life and growth, now twisted by her grief into raw, thorny power, she sent out a pulse of pure, unfiltered emotion. Her father's murder, Theron's betrayal, her own crushing loss and burning need for justice. It wasn't a spell. It was a scream from her soul, echoing in the magical currents dragons were said to perceive. Ignarion banked sharply. He landed on a wider plateau above, the ground trembling under his weight. He lowered his massive head, that fiery eye, inches from her. Lyra held her breath. A deep, rumbling voice, felt more in her bones than heard with her ears, resonated within her mind. "Little thorn, your pain sings loud. Why bring fire to my peaks?" Thus began Lyra's harsh apprenticeship. Ignarion was ancient, proud, and scarred. He spoke of a time when elves and dragons shared the peaks, bound by mutual respect and ancient oaths, overseen by the wardens of the sky. Those oaths were broken centuries ago by elves like Theron's ancestors, elves who coveted dragon magic, their scales, their very essence for power. Ignarion's own mate had been slain by elven hunters wielding weapons forged in the treacherous forges of Gloomhaven. He saw in Lyra's pain a reflection of his own enduring fury. He offered not comfort, but a brutal path, survival, strength, and the means to shatter her betrayer. "Vengeance," Ignarion's voice thrummed in her mind, "is a fire that consumes all, but strength forged in the dragon's breath can remake worlds." He taught her to navigate the lethal peaks, to find sustenance in the harshest places, to sense the subtle tremors of the earth and shifts in the wind, skills vital in dragon country. He pushed her body to its limits, forcing her to climb higher, move faster, endure more. He showed her the hidden places, the crystal caverns humming with latent energy, the sky tombs where ancient dragons slept, and the pool of scrying, a volcanic spring whose steam could sometimes show distant events, though its visions were fleeting and cryptic.
Lyra changed. The softness of the glade was burned away. Her movements became fluid and sure, her senses preternaturally sharp. Her magic, once focused on nurturing plants and soothing creatures, became a weapon. She learned to weave thorny barriers from mountain scrub, to shatter rock with focused pulses of energy, to cloak herself in shadows borrowed from Ignarion's own scales. She saw Theron's changes in the Scryme Pool's mists, the Whisper Leaf Glade renamed Theron's Stand, the circle of roots purged of dissenters, the Talon Guard growing in number and cruelty, clad in armor that shimmered with a dark, unfamiliar magic, and whispers of excavations near the sunken citadel, a place her father had forbidden exploration. Theron was digging for something dangerous tied to the old wars against dragons. He wasn't just consolidating power, he was seeking the very weapons that had shattered the ancient peace. Seeing this, Lyra's resolve hardened into diamond. Her revenge was no longer just personal. Theron threatened the fragile remnants of the world itself. The day came when Ignarion deemed her ready. "The thorn must return to the forest," he rumbled. "But you do not go as prey. You go as storm. Remember the fire, little thorn. Remember the peaks." He gifted her not gold or weapons, but knowledge, a single obsidian black scale, warm to the touch, that resonated with a fraction of his own fiery essence. It was a focus, a conduit, and a symbol. He also gave her a shard of star iron, fallen from the sky and tempered in dragonfire, which she shaped with her magic into a sleek, dark dagger, Thorn's Kiss. One final lesson: how to call the mountain winds to carry her, a terrifying, exhilarating descent from the peaks towards the canopy of Aeloria, far below. She landed silently in the outskirts of the Whisperleaf Glade, now Theron's stand. The familiar scent of moon petal blossoms was tainted by smoke and fear. The elves she saw moved quickly, heads down, their eyes shadowed. Theron's rule was a suffocating vine. Lyra moved like a ghost through her former home, a stranger in her own land. She saw the oppression: Talon guards bullying merchants in the Starlight Market, the sacred grove of whispers now guarded, its ancient trees seeming to weep. Elves whispering in corners, falling silent when others approached. She found allies in the shadows. Ilara, a weaver whose son had been taken for the sunken citadel dig, and Borin, a grizzled former hunter disgusted by the Talon Guard's brutality. They formed the Veiled Root, a small resistance cell. Through them, Lyra learned the extent of Theron's obsession. He sought the Heartstone, a legendary artifact said to amplify magic exponentially, buried within the sunken citadel. Legends warned it was unstable, created during the Dragon Wars with catastrophic results. With it, Theron wouldn't just rule Aeloria, he could dominate the surrounding human kingdoms and challenge the dragons themselves. He was close, very close. The Veiled Root planned. A frontal assault was suicide. Theron's citadel, built over the ruins of the sunken citadel entrance, was heavily fortified, guarded by Talon guards, and shimmering with wards that prickled against Lyra's senses. They needed to strike where he felt safest, where his arrogance blinded him, during the Festival of Twin Moons, the anniversary of her father's poisoning, now perversely celebrated as Theron's Ascension Day. The plan was audacious: infiltrate the citadel during the feast, sabotage the excavation below, and expose Theron's treachery and the danger of the Heartstone to the gathered elders before he could seize it.
The night arrived. Silvra and Lunara hung heavy and bright, bathing Theron's stand in silver light. Music played, but it felt hollow, forced. Theron held court in the grand hall of his citadel, a twisted parody of her father's warmth. He wore robes woven with dark threads that seemed to drink the light. The regent keeper's circlet, her father's circlet, glinting coldly on his brow. Lyra, disguised as a servant girl, using a simple glamour woven from shadows and mountain moss, moved through the throng. Her heart hammered against her ribs not with fear, but with the cold fire Ignarian had forged in her. She saw the guarded stairwell leading down, deep into the earth, the entrance to the sunken citadel dig. Talon guards flanked it, their eyes watchful. Using the distraction of a staged commotion near the hall entrance, courtesy of Borin, Lyra slipped past the guards and descended the winding stone stairs. The air grew colder, damper, smelling of ancient stone and something else. A low, ominous thrumming, like a giant, slumbering heart. The deeper she went, the stronger the oppressive feeling grew, pressing against her senses. The thrumming was the Heartstone. She reached the excavation chamber, a vast cavern lit by cold magical glow orbs. Elven workers, looking haggard and fearful, labored under the watchful eyes of Talon guards. At the chamber's center, surrounded by complex arcane apparatus humming with dark energy, pulsed the Heartstone. It wasn't a gem, but a jagged, irregular crystal the size of a dragon's egg, radiating waves of deep violet light that seemed to warp the air around it. It was terrifyingly beautiful and emanated pure, unstable power. Theron's chief sorcerer, a gaunt elf named Malachor, was directing the final preparations, his eyes feverish with greed. Lyra's mission was sabotage, to disrupt the focusing apparatus without triggering the Heartstone's volatile energy. She focused, drawing on the column Ignarian had taught her amidst mountain storms. She wove her magic not as a battering ram, but as a subtle infiltrator, like roots seeking cracks in the stone. She sent delicate pulses of disruptive energy into the arcane conduits feeding the apparatus. A glow orb flickered wildly. Malachor frowned, barking orders. A low hum rose in pitch, becoming a whine. The violet light pulsed erratically. Panic began to ripple through the workers and guards. Just a little more. "Halt!" The command echoed through the cavern, sharp as a whip crack. Theron stood at the chamber entrance, flanked by elite Talon guards. His eyes, scanning the chaos, locked onto Lyra. Her glamour flickered and died under the intensity of his gaze and the Heartstone's disruptive energy. Recognition, then cold fury flashed across his face. "Lyra," he hissed, the word dripping venom. "The mountain ghost returns. Did the dragon tire of its pet?" He raised a hand, crackling with dark energy. "Seize her! Shatter her connection to that beast!" Guards surged forward. Lyra didn't hesitate. She dropped all pretense of stealth. Thorn's kiss flashed in her hand as she parried a guard's blade. She wove thorny barriers, tangling attackers. She pulsed raw energy, knocking others back. She fought with the savage grace of the mountains, a whirlwind of obsidian scale and elven fury. But Theron was powerful, augmented by the dark magic he'd embraced. He deflected her energy blasts with shields of crackling shadow. He sent bolts of dark force that seared the air where she had been an instant before. Malachor, seeing his precious apparatus destabilizing, shrieked and tried to stabilize the Heartstone, causing even wilder energy fluctuations. The cavern trembled. Rocks fell from the ceiling.
"You're too late, cousin," Theron roared over the chaos, advancing. He unleashed a torrent of shadow, not at Lyra, but at the Heartstone apparatus Malachor was desperately trying to control. "You only hasten its awakening. With its power, I will cleanse Aloria of weakness, starting with you and your scaled master." The dark energy struck the apparatus. The whine became a shriek. The Heartstone pulsed violently, a wave of violent energy exploding outwards. It threw Talon guards off their feet, shattered glow orbs, and cracked the ancient stone floor. Lyra was hurled backwards, slamming into a wall. Theron, shielded by his magic, laughed, his eyes fixed on the wildly pulsing crystal. "Yes, yes, feel it, the power." Above, the ground trembled. The citadel shook. In the grand hall, the feast dissolved into screams as chandeliers swayed and cracks appeared in the floor. Elders stared in horror as the thrumming power from below became a physical vibration. Borin and Alara seized the moment, shouting the truth. "Theron betrays us. He seeks the Heartstone. He murdered Alarian." Below, Lyra pushed herself up, pain lancing through her side. Theron was reaching for the Heartstone, oblivious to the cracks widening beneath his feet, the ceiling groaning. Malachor screamed the warning, lost in the din. Lyra knew. If Theron touched the crystal in its unstable state, the resulting explosion would obliterate the citadel, Theron's stand, and half the forest. Her revenge wouldn't be justice, it would be annihilation, mirroring Theron's own destructive ambition. She couldn't let him doom everyone. Not like this. She didn't attack Theron. She reached inward. She focused on Ignarion's scale, warm against her skin. She focused on the bond forged in fire and survival, on the ancient pain of broken oaths he carried. She poured every ounce of her will, her grief, her fury, and her desperate need to protect what remained of her home into that connection. It wasn't a call for help. It was a sharing of the cataclysm about to unfold. "Ignarion!" Her mental scream tore through the distance. High in the ember peaks, Ignarion, watching the twin moons, felt it. The surge of unstable power, Lyra's terror, the echo of ancient devastation. He threw back his head and roared. Not a roar of anger,
but a deep, resonant bellow that shook the mountains, a sound that carried across leagues, a sound that spoke of ancient guardianship invoked. Then, with earth-shattering wing beats, he launched himself into the night, a comet of obsidian and crimson streaking towards Eloria. In the cavern, Theron's fingers were inches from the violently pulsating Heartstone. Lyra acted, not with destructive force, but with the essence of the mountains, the resilience Ignarion had taught her. She slammed her palms onto the trembling stone floor. She poured her magic not into shattering, but into binding. She wove roots of pure energy, not thorny and sharp, but strong and deep, like the roots of the ancient peaks anchoring against a storm. They snaked across the floor, wrapping around the Heartstone's base, around the cracking apparatus, reinforcing the buckling stone pillars. She wasn't stopping the energy. She was desperately trying to contain it, to hold the fragile structure together, buying seconds. The strain was immense. Violent energy lashed against her bindings, threatening to shred them. Blood trickled from her nose. Theron, startled by her action, hesitated, his hand hovering. "Fool, you cannot hold it."
The ceiling exploded. Not downwards, but outwards. Stone and earth were blasted upwards into the night sky as a colossal obsidian head wreathed in smoke and glowing embers filled the gaping hole. Ignarion had arrived. He didn't land. He hovered, his immense form blotting out the moons, his fiery gaze fixed on the scene below. His presence alone was a shockwave, silencing the chaos above and below for a split second. He saw Lyra, straining, binding the unstable energy. He saw Theron, frozen, hand outstretched towards the Heartstone. He saw the legacy of ancient betrayal threatening to repeat. Ignarion inhaled, not to breathe fire, but to draw. A vortex of wind howled through the cavern, pulling dust, loose stones, and the chaotic, violent energy radiating from the Heartstone towards him. He wasn't absorbing it, he was pulling the unstable, excess power away from the source, away from Lyra's fragile bindings and the crumbling cavern. The violet light dimmed slightly. The shrieking whine lowered in pitch. The tremors lessened. Lyra felt the pressure ease just a fraction. She gasped, strengthening her bindings. Theron recovered from his shock, replaced by towering rage and ambition. "Dragon!" he screamed, turning his dark magic not on the Heartstone, but on Ignarion. Bolts of searing shadow shot upwards. They struck Ignarion's chest scales, sizzling but failing to penetrate his ancient hide. It was like throwing pebbles at a mountain. Ignarion ignored him, focused solely on siphoning the dangerous excess energy. Theron, enraged and desperate, saw his prize stabilizing as Lyra's bindings held and Ignarion siphoned the overflow. He lunged at the final inches, his hand closing around the Heartstone. The moment his skin touched the crystal, a final catastrophic pulse of violet energy erupted. But this time, it wasn't an explosion outwards. It inverted. It surged into Theron. His scream wasn't of pain, but of utter, overwhelming consumption. His body arced, eyes blazing with impossible violet light, then began to fracture. Dark lines spread across his skin like broken glass, glowing from within. The stolen power, the dark magic he'd wielded, and the Heartstone's raw, unstable essence were too much. He wasn't mastering it, it was devouring him. He turned towards Lyra, not with hatred, but with a horrifying moment of terrified clarity. "Lyra!" The word was a gasp. Then, with a sound like shattering obsidian, Theron dissolved, not into dust, but into shimmering violet motes that winked out like dying stars, leaving only a fading echo and the cold humming Heartstone lying on the stone floor, now dormant, its violent energy spent in that final, self-destructive surge. Silence descended, heavy and stunned.
The tremors stopped. The violet light faded to a soft internal glow within the crystal. Above, Ignarion ceased to siphoning, the vortex dying. He looked down at Lyra, her bindings dissolving, her knees buckling from exhaustion and release. Malachor gibbered in a corner. Talonguard stared in disbelief. From above, through the hole Ignarion had made, the shocked faces of elders and elves peered down, having witnessed the final act of Theron's ambition and his horrifying end.
Lyra looked up at the immense dragon hovering in the moonlight. The fire of vengeance that had sustained her for so long flickered and went out, leaving behind ash, profound weariness, and the hollow space where her family had been. She had shattered Theron, but not by her hand. His own betrayal, his greed for power he couldn't control, had consumed him. Justice, perhaps, but it tasted like dust. Ignarion's voice, weary but clear, resonated in her mind. The thorn survived. The forest endures. The fire burns low. He didn't land. He didn't offer comfort. With a final, powerful beat of his wings that stirred the dust in the cavern, he ascended back into the night sky, a dark silhouette against the twin moons, returning to his lonely peaks. His task, his ancient debt perhaps partially repaid, was done. Lyra stood amidst the ruins of Theron's ambition and her own quest for revenge. The Heartstone, now inert but still radiating immense potential danger, lay before her. The eyes of her people, filled with fear, awe, and confusion, were upon her. Theron was gone, consumed by the very darkness he embraced, but the scars he left ran deep. In the land, in the people, in her own soul. The path ahead wasn't victory, but the long, hard road of healing. She picked up the dormant Heartstone, its surface cool now, feeling its immense, slumbering power. She wouldn't hide it, she wouldn't use it, she would guard it, not as a weapon, but as a reminder of the cost of betrayal, the peril of unchecked ambition, and the fragile, hard-won peace that now rested, like the Heartstone itself, in the hands of the thorn who had walked through fire and returned, forever changed, under the watchful shadow of dragon wings. The music of the Whisperleaf glade might one day return, but it would never sound the same again.